In the early hours of Christmas morning 2019, California woman Sabrina Marie Gutierrez got into a fight with her boyfriend, 31-year-old Ricky Martinez, over Instagram messages he'd received from another woman. They left their San Jose home together, but the row continued. At around 2 a.m., Gutierrez called her mother, Stephanie Rivera, and allegedly told the woman that her boyfriend was pointing a gun at her, adding, "I'm going to run his ass over." Shortly thereafter, Rivera met her at the corner of East Santa Clara Street and 26th, accompanied by her son. They saw that Gutierrez was sitting inside her Chevy Malibu while her boyfriend was standing outside. A confrontation ensued that culminated with Martinez shooting Gutierrez's brother, non-fatally wounding him in the arm and thigh. The gunman fled the scene on foot, but 22-year-old Gutierrez drove after him. She caught up to Martinez, mounted the sidewalk, and mowed him down. The incident was caught on CCTV, and it seemed to show that the Chevy ran the man over without applying its brakes. Gutierrez kept driving, and her vehicle was later discovered engulfed in flames at Feldspar Avenue and Arctic Street. Martinez was found unresponsive in the street with a Glock pistol close to his body. He subsequently died in the hospital. Gutierrez was arrested on the night of December the 25th and charged with vehicular homicide. By multiple accounts, Gutierrez and Martinez's relationship had been tumultuous, but their families each pointed to the other as the main aggressor in their disputes. According to updates on the matter, a judge ordered Gutierrez to be held without bond, and her pre-trial hearing was scheduled for February of 2020. Number 8. Summer Betts-Ramsey and Bradley Harris.
It's the police. Open up the door. Or unlock it for me so I can open it. Right, when you unlock the door, just take a step back from the door, please, yeah? Show me your hands. Okay, I mean, your hands are erect. Yeah, you take your hands today. Yeah. Running Harrow.
In January of 2024, an unnamed transgender girl in her late teens from England was invited to join a Snapchat group by other youths as they were planning a trip to a roller disco event in northwest London. By multiple accounts, there was some flirting between the boys and the girls in the chat. Bradley Harris then invited the aforementioned girl, an aspiring model, to his home on January the 29th. Harris suspected that she was transgender from conversations with his friends, but she denied it. The girl then kissed him and performed an intimate act on him. Harris secretly recorded her and shared the footage. Shortly thereafter, a friend called him to tell him that the girl was transgender. Harris questioned her again at knife point, which resulted in her admitting it and apologizing for lying. The girl left the home, but in the days that followed, Harris began plotting a revenge attack. He recruited 19-year-old Summer Betts-Ramsey, who would become his main accomplice. Others from the Snapchat group, including Shiloh Hines, Cameron Osai, and several unnamed teens, joined the plot. On the surface, plans to attend the roller disco event remained unchanged, and the girl was fully unaware that others in the group sought to harm her. On the evening of February the 10th, she went to meet them near Harrow Leisure Centre. Betts-Ramsey took a photograph of Osai, Hines, and Harris as they waited for their intended victim at a bus stop. The trio were dressed in dark clothing with masks and hoods, and they threw up gang signs. As the girl arrived, they started running in the direction of a car park, and she joined them. When they stopped, the group surrounded the girl and a savage attack immediately unfolded. The victim had no chance to defend herself, and she was floored by several punches. After she went down, Betts-Ramsey kicked her multiple times before she took out a knife and began stabbing her. While the victim was being knifed, the others continued to strike and stomp her. Hines poured the contents of a bottle on her and punched her over a dozen times. Harris kicked her repeatedly and at one point took a run-up before delivering a hard kick. As the vicious violence unfolded and as blood pooled around the victim, an unnamed teenage girl from the group stole her handbag. The attack was captured on CCTV and recorded by the assailants on their cell phones. It lasted 45 seconds and only stopped when a member of the public intervened. Reportedly, as Betts-Ramsey was stomping on the victim's head, the attackers fled towards a subway station, and an ambulance was called for the girl. She survived but suffered multiple injuries, including nearly a dozen knife wounds to her nose, buttocks, thighs, hand, and right flank. Betts-Ramsey subsequently posted a story to her Snapchat and included footage of the attack, an image of the victim on a ventilator, and a number of transphobic slurs with laughing emojis. Betts-Ramsey told friends, "I'm going jail, bro. I stabbed her 12 times. She received a message that read, "Stabbing a girl because she's trans. It's disgusting." To which Betts-Ramsey replied, "It deserved it." Footage from Met Police showed the 19-year-old being arrested in Barnet hours after the attack. The others were taken into custody in the weeks that followed. In a victim impact statement, the victim said that she struggled with anxiety, depression, and lived in constant fear. She worried that the thick scars with which the attack had left her would affect her chances of becoming a model. She said, "In the past, I have experienced animosity towards me for being transgender, but I never thought anyone would have so much hatred for me and want to assault me in the way they did. By January of 2025, the attackers had pleaded guilty and were sentenced. At the Old Bailey, Judge Philip Katz KC said of the CCTV recorded violence, "I have watched it more than once. It is sickening to watch. It was fast-moving and lasted less than a minute. Everyone joined in enthusiastically and played their part." Betts-Ramsey was described as a knife-obsessed teen who'd spent most of her life in children's homes. She admitted causing grievous bodily harm with intent and possession of an offensive weapon. She was sentenced to 8 years and 6 months, with more than half of her sentence to be served in the custody of a youth offenders institution and the rest on license. Hines, Harris, and Osai were each jailed for 3 years after pleading guilty to causing grievous bodily harm with intent. A male teenager admitted the same charge and was given a youth rehabilitation order. The girl who stole the victim's bag pleaded guilty and was given a supervision order for 12 months, having already spent a year in custody. Number 7. Jivan Dean. On August the 14th of 2024, Raven Riley went to visit a friend at the Tippy Valley near Llandilo in Carmarthenshire, Wales. The off-grid eco-community had been founded in 1976 on values of peace and love. Many of its members lived in tipis, yurts, and turf-rooted huts. After Riley's arrival, one of the community's members, 24-year-old Jivan Dean, reportedly started acting out of character. He went into the kitchen to heat water on the hob and added a white powder which he claimed was ketamine. Moments later, he walked into the room where 20-year-old Riley was sitting in a chair. From less than 5 feet away, Dean threw the liquid on the man and told him to stay away from his girlfriend. It was later discovered that the substance he'd used in the mixture was the highly corrosive sodium hydroxide. Riley was left in excruciating pain and immediately yelled, "Help! Help! It burns. I cannot see." As reported by witnesses, the substance burned the leather chair in which he was sitting and caused other items to bubble around it. Riley was rushed to the hospital with severe chemical burns to his head, face, chest, and neck. Dean was arrested on multiple charges, but his vengeful actions were revealed to have been baseless. The victim had only met his girlfriend once, and Dean was present when the meeting occurred. As revealed at Swansea Crown Court, the attack blinded Riley in both eyes. In a victim impact statement, the man said, "My independence has been cruelly taken away from me. I no longer feel safe. I still have burn marks and scars." He told the court that he often struggled with nightmares and that the attack ruined his life. Dean pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm with intent and causing a dangerous or noxious thing to be received with intent to burn. In October of 2024, he was jailed for 15 years with an additional 4 years on license. Speaking to Dean, Judge Geraint Walters described the attack as a cold, calculated, deliberate act of unimaginable cruelty which was intended to maim your victim for life. Walters further admonished Dean, saying, "The wickedness of this goes beyond most reasoning. You have not shown any remorse whatsoever about what you did." Number 6. Gavin Train. 23-year-old Englishman Bradley Tams was found in critical condition in Slattyford, Newcastle, on December the 6th of 2023. When first responders reached him, he was covered in blood while lying on the ground of a first-floor block of flats. Tam suffered a devastating knife wound to the side of his torso, and he subsequently died in an ambulance. The investigation that followed revealed that the killing blow had been dealt by 24-year-old Gavin Train. He was at one point reported as being one of the victim's best friends. However, a few days before his death, Tams had robbed Train's older brother at knife point, taking his phone and bank card. Train consequently messaged the father of 3, vowing to put him in an early grave. On December the 6th, Train was in a Peugeot 206 driven by his mother, Andrea. Joining them was their 24-year-old associate, Lewis Allison. They followed Tams, who was a passenger in a taxi. When the latter vehicle stopped, the Peugeot pulled up behind it. Train and Allison then dragged Tams out of the taxi. CCTV and bystander cell phone footage showed 49-year-old Andrea egging her son on, screaming, "Just do him in! And that's it, hit him, do him!" Train delivered a single knife strike. He then abandoned the victim and returned to the Peugeot, which was captured on CCTV fleeing the area. Train, his mother, and Allison were arrested in the murder's wake. The knife man was reported to have told the police at the time, "I've made one stupid mistake and it's just cost me my whole life." Train pleaded guilty to murder and was jailed for life, with a minimum term of 21 years in the fall of 2024. His mother and Allison admitted charges of violent disorder and were each given 3 years and 4 months behind bars. Number 5. Juan Carlos Medina and Mario Alfonso Aguilar. On April the 24th of 2015, Luis Andres Cuellun was heading to work in Guatemala City accompanied by Abimael Rodas, a worker for the country's social welfare secretary. 30-year-old Coyon was the director of a local youth detention facility called Las Gaviotas, or the Seagulls. As he and Rodas were traveling through the capital in a pickup truck, a second vehicle pulled up alongside them. Within seconds, gunshots rang out. Coyon and Rodas abandoned their bullet-riddled truck, brandished their own weapons, and returned fire. Coyon had already been wounded before he got out of the vehicle, and he died in the shootout. Rodas survived and was treated at a local hospital for bullet wounds to his leg and arm. In the gun battle's immediate aftermath, 2 suspects were chased down and apprehended. A third person believed to have been involved in the attack was able to get away. The arrestees were identified as 29-year-old Juan Carlos Medina and Mario Alfonso Aguilar, also known as Marito, who was in his late teens. 2 AK-47 assault rifles with corresponding ammunition, a pistol, and 2 grenades were found in their vehicle. Medina and Aguilar belonged to the Coronados Locos, a criminal structure of the notorious MS-13 gang, also known as Mara Salvatrucha. MS-13 was formed in LA in the 1980s by El Salvadoran immigrants and within a few decades became one of the most feared criminal organizations in the world. Medina told the authorities that he'd arrived in Guatemala from El Salvador in February with the specific purpose of carrying out the hit. He said that he followed the orders of a gang leader known as El Travieso, or the Naughty One, and claimed that he wasn't paid, saying, "I did it because I like to kill." The assassination was in revenge for the mistreatment and harassment that MS-13 gang members had reportedly suffered at Las Gaviotas. Medina told law enforcement that Coyon had abused inmates until they vomited blood. Number 4. Tyshawn Lee and the Terror Dome, or Killa Ward War. On November the 2nd of 2015, Tyshawn Lee was sitting on a swing in Chicago's Dawes Park, which was down the street from his grandmother's house. A man by the name of D. Wright Boone Dottie approached Tyshawn and dribbled his basketball a few times before he offered to buy him a juice box from the store. 2 men, driver Kevin Edwards and passenger Corey Morgan, waited in an SUV nearby. Boone Dottie lured Tyshawn to an alley where he brandished a pistol and shot him multiple times. The boy put his hands up as he tried to defend himself, but it was to no avail. Bullets struck him in the head, back, forearm, and partially severed his right thumb. 21-year-old Boone Dottie shot Tyshawn a total of 7 times, with the fatal bullet hitting the boy in the temple. Boone Dottie then got into the SUV where Edwards and Morgan were waiting, and the trio fled the area. The murder shocked the nation due to its sheer brutality and ruthlessness. Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy was quoted as saying, "It was probably the most abhorrent, cowardly, unfathomable crime that I've witnessed in 35 years of policing." The investigation that followed revealed that the execution of Tyshawn was a targeted gang hit as part of an ongoing war between the Terror Dome faction of the Black P. Stones and the Killa Ward faction of the Black Gangster Disciples. The feud had already claimed several lives. The assailants were part of Terror Dome, while Tyshawn's father, Pierre Stokes, was affiliated with the rival Killa Ward. The driving force behind the assassination of Tyshawn was Corey Morgan, who sought revenge at all cost for the death of his brother, Tracy. The latter, a parolee, was killed in a targeted hit on October the 13th of 2015, right after he'd attended a police-sponsored meeting to resolve gang violence in the area. His 56-year-old mother was driving him home, and they were heading toward Lafayette and 83rd when they were boxed in by 2 vehicles. 2 gunmen emerged and fired 15 rounds at them. Tracy was killed while his mother survived with a gunshot wound to the arm. The authorities argued that the shooting of Morgan's mother broke an unwritten gang code and thus made families fair game in the war. Morgan vowed to retaliate and go after grandmas, mamas, kids and all. He went out daily, along with Boone Dottie and Edwards, looking for victims. On October the 18th, less than a week after Tracy was killed, Boone Dottie and Edwards were reported to have spotted 19-year-old Brianna Jenkins and Deshari Bowens, aged 20, sitting in a car near 78th and Honor. Believing that Bowens was affiliated with Killa Ward, Boone Dottie walked up to the car and opened fire. Jenkins was killed while Bowens was wounded. Days later, the Terror Dome trio went after Tyshawn. Boone Dottie was reported to have initially wanted to maim the boy by cutting off his fingers and ears, but ultimately gunned him down at point-blank range. Morgan and Boone Dottie were arrested roughly 2 weeks after the killing, while Edwards was taken into custody about 6 months later. Superintendent McCarthy told the media at the time, "They're going to be obliterated. That gang just signed its own death warrant." There was considerable evidence linking Boone Dottie to Tyshawn's murder. A jailhouse informant wearing a wire recorded him laughing and boasting about the hit. He admitted to the killing and said that he'd seen the bullet go in his head, but his lawyers would later argue that he was acting tough and didn't mean what he said. Additionally, Boone Dottie's DNA was recovered from Tyshawn's basketball and from the getaway vehicle. In 2017, a squad car pulled up on an empty lot where a rap video was being filmed. A crowd of dozens dispersed, leaving behind 5 guns. One of them proved a match for the weapon used to kill Tyshawn, and detectives found that it had been bought by Morgan's brother, Anthony, from a man in New Mexico. In August of 2019, Anthony was sentenced to 4 years in prison on federal gun trafficking charges. Edwards, who faced a 60-year sentence, pleaded guilty to murder and was handed a 25-year term in October of 2019, as the trials for him and the others were set to commence. Boondotti and Morgan were tried before the same judge, but in front of separate juries, and each was found guilty for the death of Tyshawn. Boondotti was sentenced to 90 years, while Morgan was given 65 years, with the judge ordering them to complete 100% of their sentences. The harrowing hit that claimed Tyshawn's life had further ramifications. A few months after he was gunned down, his father sought to avenge him. Pierre Stokes shot Corey Morgan's girlfriend, Robin Matthews, and her 2 adult nephews, Antoine and Kevin Davis. They were wounded, but all 3 survived. The incident occurred at a gas station near 79th and Ashland on March the 8th of 2016, the same day that Boondotti first appeared in court for Tyshawn's killing. In 2023, Stokes was found guilty of 3 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and 1 count of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. He faced a sentence of 31 years to life. Number 3. Lumumba Sayers Sr. Leading up to August of 2023, former MMA fighter Lumumba Sayers Sr. had become an anti-gun advocate and community leader in Colorado. He started the Heavy Hearts, Heavy Hands boxing gym in Aurora and a foundation of the same name. Sayers was also heavily involved with the Gloves Up, Guns Down initiative in Denver. During his MMA career, Sayers fought big names in the sport such as Anthony Smith, Derek Brunson, and Drew Dober. He additionally held a professional middleweight title in a promotion called No Mercy Extreme Fighting. The retired combat athlete's goal was to work with youths and steer them away from gang violence through structured martial arts training, and by giving them a sense of belonging. His son, Lumumba Jr., was a competing MMA fighter, and he worked alongside his father in promoting the same anti-gun mentality through sports-driven discipline. The 23-year-old fought during a Heavy Hearts, Heavy Hands event held in April of 2023 and told the media at the time, "It's changed my life, really." Unfortunately, a few months later, he would be dead. Lumumba Jr. and another man were gunned down during a quadruple shooting in Denver's 5 Points neighborhood on August 19th of 2023. About a month later, 24-year-old Tyrell Braxton was arrested and charged with Lumumba Jr.'s murder, the motive of which was unclear. Surveillance video from a home close to the scene on the southwest corner of 28th and Welton showed Braxton repeatedly displaying a firearm for hours prior to the shooting. He was then seen getting into a man's face and letting off 6 shots. Immediately, others started shooting, and law enforcement ultimately recovered 71 spent shell casings fired from 8 different firearms. Sayers spoke to a reporter in the aftermath of his son's killing, saying, "This coward shot my son. He shot my son, man. The community that we protect, the community that he tried to help guide in a different direction that he grew up in. They killed my son." The teary-eyed father added that his son wasn't a gangbanger, drug dealer, or troublemaker. Looking back on Lumumba Jr.'s booming MMA career, Sayers said, "He was better than me. He was going to make it farther than I was. I had the recipe. He had the skills." Lumumba Jr. was survived by a 2-month-old son to whom Sayers said he loved being a father. The murder case against Braxton was ultimately dismissed, and only a charge of illegal possession of ammunition remained. By Colorado law, the records of the dismissed case were sealed. Sayers returned to fighting in 2024 and took part in a bare-knuckle fighting championship event in May, where he defeated his opponent 12 seconds into the bout. In spite of an apparent return to form, 46-year-old Sayers would be arrested for murder a few months later. On August 10th of 2024, nearly a year after the death of his son, the man approached a party in Pioneer Park, Commerce City. The event was hosted by 28-year-old Malcolm Watson for the birthday of his toddler son. Sayers walked up to Watson and shot him, once in the head and 4 times in the torso. Multiple witnesses would report that the former fighter pointed the pistol at a bystander before he tried to place the weapon under Watson's body. Sayers' daughter, Hawaii, was reported to have been waiting for him in a nearby vehicle. Sayers returned to her and grabbed a different gun, which he planted near Weston. A Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives investigation later discovered that the second-hand gun didn't have a bullet in the chamber, and that it had been purchased by the former roommate of Lumumba Jr. The gun that had fired the fatal shots wasn't found, and the police suspected that Sayers had asked Hawaii to get rid of it. According to the Denver Gazette, Hawaii was with Lumumba Jr. when he was fatally shot, and in the ensuing chaos, she suffered multiple injuries. Watson was a friend of Braxton the man initially accused of killing Lumumba Jr., but the authorities didn't offer further details about their relationship. Investigators believe that Sayers gunned down Watson in an act of eye for an eye for his son's killing. In mid-March of 2025, Sayers pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. He also faced 2 counts of felony menacing and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. When asked in court if he was under the influence of substances that might impede his decision-making process, Sayers said, "I have never used drugs or alcohol a day in my life, Your Honor." The man was ordered to be held on a $5 million cash-only bond, and his trial was set to commence on September the 2nd of 2025. Today's topic was requested by Fluffy. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Stefan Appleton. On June the 10th of 2015, Stefan Appleton and several friends were in Nightingale Park in the Islington area of London when a youth jumped off a moped and brandished a 25-inch blade commonly referred to as a zombie knife. The knife wielder, subsequently identified as Blaise Lewinson, chased after Appleton and his companions. At some point, 18-year-old Appleton tripped and fell to the ground, whereupon Lewinson stabbed him multiple times. As the attacker rode away on a scooter operated by an accomplice, he reportedly shouted out RP. It was in reference to his gang, the Red Pitch Boys, which was a rival to the Essex Road Boys, which was active in the Nightingale Park area. Appleton, who was reportedly affiliated with the latter gang, died due to shock and hemorrhage from a stab wound to the chest. Lewinson fled to Bristol and then returned to London, where he went into hiding, but he was eventually arrested and convicted of manslaughter. He had a previous conviction for possessing a blade after being caught with a lock knife in a McDonald's restaurant roughly a year before the killing. He was jailed for life with a minimum term of 9 years, with the judge arguing that the attack was very close to murder. A prevailing argument against the murder charge was that Lewinson was assaulted himself after he'd approached Appleton's group trying to get back his bicycle, which another boy had stolen from him. The Essex Road Boys would launch a retaliatory attack on March the 17th of 2017. A gang of 6 masked youths on bikes set upon a boy in his mid-teens who was riding a moped in Stoke Newington. They chased him to the Arcade Mini Market on Matthias Road. The boy, whose brother belonged to the Red Pitch gang, desperately took refuge behind the counter. As captured on CCTV, one of the masked assailants leaned over and stabbed him repeatedly with a large Rambo-style knife. He then calmly sheathed the weapon before he and his accomplices took off on their bikes. The victim was left with multiple wounds, and as he clutched his chest, told staff in the shop that he thought he was going to die, and that his attackers were part of the Essex Road gang. He survived with a punctured lung and lacerations to his liver, as well as stab wounds to his thigh and shoulder. Neither the victim nor his attacker could be named for legal reasons. A series of police raids in Camden ended with officers reaching the assailant's home. The Rambo knife was found in his bed, along with a picture of Stefan Appleton. The victim's DNA was later found to be present on the blade. The boy was arrested, and the investigation revealed that he'd previously rapped about gangs, violence, and knives in YouTube videos. He also reportedly posed with fellow Essex Road gang members while wearing a top emblazoned with RIP Stefan Appleton. In the fall of 2017, the boy was convicted of attempted murder, affray, and possessing a knife after a trial at the Old Bailey. He was jailed for 14 years. Crown prosecutors described his actions as a vicious attack involving large knives and the clear intention to take the life of another human being. Clearly, the people in this video refuse to take the high road. Stick around after number 1 to watch our previous release about when doing the right thing goes completely wrong. Number 1. Holly Towell and Rochelle Black. An unnamed English woman was driving home in Reading on July the 12th of 2020 when she was set upon by Holly Towell and Rochelle Black, both of whom were severely inebriated. The victim had known Towell for about 8 years and had had run-ins with her in the past. The crux of the most recent row was Towell's belief that the woman had slept with her ex-boyfriend. Towell wrenched open her car door while the engine was still running and screamed at her to admit that she'd been intimate with her ex. She and Black dragged the victim out of the vehicle. Towell punched the woman in the face, kicked her in the mouth, stomped on the side of her head, and ripped chunks of her hair out. Black assisted in the assault and smashed the victim's phone when she tried to call for help. Towell at one point called her ex and said, "Your missus is getting beaten up right now." A vehicle drove by and startled the aggressors, giving the victim enough time to return to her car and drive off. 25-year-old Towell and Black, aged 21, appeared in court together and admitted assault, occasioning actual bodily harm. In the spring of 2022, in spite of the attack's brutality, both avoided a custodial sentence. Towell had previously worked at Mencap a charity organization helping people with learning disabilities, but she was fired in light of her arrest. At the time of pleading guilty to the assault, she was a single mother to a 7-year-old son and pregnant with a second child. The sentencing judge took those aspects into consideration. Towell was given a 12-month sentence, suspended for 2 years, in order to take part in 20 rehabilitation activity requirements, as well as abide by a curfew for 6 months. Black was sentenced to 6 months, suspended for 2 years. She also had to perform 20 rehabilitation activities, 100 hours of unpaid work, and pay £400 compensation for the victim's phone. Both were also subject to a restraining order barring any form of contact with the victim. A Circle K worker from Westminster, Colorado, sued her employers after she was fired for putting her hands on an armed thief who stole a pack of cigarettes. At approximately 7 p.m. on October the 4th of 2020, 72-year-old Mary Ann Moreno was behind the counter when a man walked into the convenience store located at 9489 Sheridan Boulevard. The man was carrying a knife in one hand and a sealed package in the other that also reportedly contained a knife. He asked Moreno if she'd give him a pack of cigarettes for free. The woman declined, telling him she'd get fired if she did. The suspect then walked towards the door but abruptly turned around, walked right past Moreno, and grabbed the pack from behind the counter. The employee grabbed his arm in an attempt to stop him but then backed off and the man ran out. Moreno immediately dialed 911 and called her manager. The police caught the thief, identified as Tyler Darren Wimmer, after a brief foot chase. He later pleaded guilty to robbery and a pair of unrelated cases and received a 3-year community corrections sentence. Moreno was ultimately fired for supposedly violating the company's policy on chasing and confronting shoplifters. The resulting lawsuit, which was filed in September of 2022, alleged that Moreno was wrongfully terminated from the store where she'd worked for the past 18 years. Number 8. Jefferson Heavner. 27-year-old Marvin Jacob Lee was jailed for shooting a man who tried to help him when his car stalled during a blizzard in Catawba, North Carolina. At around 5:30 p.m. on January the 22nd of 2016, Lee's car slid off a snow-slicked road. He was subsequently spotted by the occupants of a passing car, who pulled over to help. The group of 3 Good Samaritans reportedly believed that Lee was intoxicated, so they tried to confiscate his car keys. Upon overhearing that the group was planning to call the police, Lee got out of the car and opened fire at them. One of the men in the group, 26-year-old Jefferson Heavner, was shot multiple times. When emergency crews arrived, Heavner was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim's sister said that he would regularly use his truck to help drivers out of ditches during snowstorms. The suspect also fired at other vehicles that had stopped to help him, but fortunately no one else was hurt. When the sheriff's tactical team arrived to arrest Lee, he was passed out in his car. In a subsequent interview, Lee's lawyer Victoria Jane said that the man had been drinking and taking painkillers leading up to the incident. Jane added that it appeared as though someone else had been driving and left her client asleep in the car. She claims her client was startled, believing he was in danger, when someone reached in to take the car keys. On January the 24th of 2018, Lee pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and 2 counts of discharging a weapon into an occupied vehicle. He was handed a 14 to 19-year prison sentence and would be credited for the 2 years he'd already served. Number 7. Santino Biola. A video of 3 men stealing around $500 worth of laundry detergent went viral in mid-2023. Santino Biola, who worked as a security guard at the King's Supermarket in Denver, Colorado, was alerted to a theft in progress on June the 18th of that year. According to Inside Edition, Biola saw a man wheel a grocery cart filled with laundry detergent out of the store. The man and 2 accomplices hastily loaded the items into their black Chevrolet Trax. Biola took out his cell phone and started recording the 3 men as he confronted them over the theft. When the vehicle was about to leave, Biola removed a piece of foil that was covering the license plate. After the suspects fled, Biola contacted authorities and posted the video online, where it was viewed over 1 million times. Arapahoe County Sheriff's Detective Eric Van Cleve said that Biola's video immensely helped the ensuing investigation. Van Cleve added that the police were able to identify the registered owner of the Chevrolet, who said he loaned the car to a friend, 32-year-old Jorge Pantoja. The latter was already in custody at the Adams County Detention Facility on unrelated felony charges. In connection with the robbery, he was charged with theft. Pantoja admitted that he'd picked up the other two men at a train station and offered them some money in exchange for their help in stealing from the store. The police were still searching for the other suspects as of recent updates. A day after the incident, Biola was suspended from his job for violating store policy against intervening in illegal activity. He was ultimately fired a week later. Number 6. Regina Hampson. Early on the morning of April the 3rd of 2021, 33-year-old Canadian woman Regina Hampson became permanently disfigured after risking her life to save her friend. The ordeal unfolded at a home on Groveland Drive in the city of Nanaimo at approximately 6 a.m. Hampson came upon her roommate at the wrong end of a loaded 12-gauge shotgun. She intervened by grabbing the weapon, which subsequently went off, hitting Hampson in the face and hand. She was taken to a hospital in Vancouver where she underwent surgery on her right eye and thumb. Hampson fortunately survived but was left with a permanent loss of vision in her right eye. Number 5. Daniel Wesley. A Louisiana teen was shot twice and ran over by a car while trying to help a dying woman in Baton Rouge on November the 27th of 2016. 30-year-old April Peck had been shot and tossed out of a car by her boyfriend, Terrell Walker, aged 48. Teenager Daniel Wesley was driving home from the Mall of Louisiana when he saw Peck lying on the ground along Essen Lane. He immediately stopped and rushed to her aid. According to WAFB, Walker warned Wesley he was going to die if he tried to help. The man then rammed his Chevy Malibu into Wesley, pushing him into the side of an arriving ambulance. The teen's arm was shattered and his femur was snapped. Walker then pointed his gun at Wesley and fired 2 rounds. He also shot at an emergency medical services unit, but fortunately no one else was hit. When deputies arrived, Walker was gone, but they subsequently located him on Blue Bonnet Boulevard. They ordered the suspect to put his hands up, whereupon he pulled out his handgun. A shootout ensued, during the course of which Walker was killed. Peck and Wesley were rushed to the Our Lady of the Lake Hospital, where the former succumbed to her injuries. Wesley survived after undergoing 2 surgeries in 3 days. Number 4. Albert Jackson. 51-year-old Ohio man Albert Jackson was a loss prevention officer at a Family Dollar in Cincinnati's Avondale neighborhood, but was fired after thwarting a would-be thief on June the 8th of 2015. That morning, a woman was stealing detergent and shirts from the store, located on Reading Road. She was confronted by Jackson at the back of the store and he asked her to open her purse. The thief allegedly snapped it open and quickly closed it before charging towards the man. She then punched him and knocked several shelves over during the ensuing tussle. According to the police, some store items were broken and a cash register was knocked over during the fight. The woman, later identified as Amanda Baker, was held down by Jackson until law enforcement arrived. The 31-year-old was subsequently booked at the Hamilton County Justice Center, where she was held while awaiting trial for robbery. In the wake of the incident, corporate employees from Family Dollar accused Jackson of putting other workers at risk and fired him. Jackson told the Inquirer that he was informed his service was no longer needed because the items he damaged were worth more than what the thief had in her bag. While speaking on his termination, Jackson said, "I feel like they're not with the employees." Number 3. Danielle Kane. A Toronto nursing student was shot while she and her boyfriend rushed to help a wounded gunshot victim on the evening of July the 22nd of 2018. 31-year-old Danielle Kane and her partner, nurse Jerry Pinkson, were celebrating a friend's birthday on the patio of a local restaurant when they heard at least 10 gunshots ring out. They immediately wanted to help, as 35-year-old Pinkson would later describe. They rushed out of the restaurant, hoping to put their medical training to life-saving use. Pinkson exited through a side door, and upon reaching the street, he made eye contact with the shooter, 29-year-old Faisal Hussein. The latter quickly lifted his hand and opened fire at Pinkson, who successfully ducked out of the way but then heard a scream behind him. He turned and found his girlfriend lying on the ground by the restaurant. A bullet had entered the left side of Kane's chest, passed through her stomach, and ricocheted off her spine before exiting through the right side of her chest. A gunfight between Hussein and the police later ensued, after which the former died from a bullet to the head. Kane ultimately spent 11 days in a medically induced coma. She survived after undergoing 4 surgeries. According to the doctors, the bullet didn't sever Kane's spinal cord but caused massive cell death and left her paralyzed from the waist down. A year later, Kane said in an interview that the chronic pain in her lower back was more disabling than her inability to walk. Number 2. Christopher Martin. California man Christopher Martin was shot in the head while trying to prevent his friends from being robbed in Los Angeles during the early hours of April the 16th of 2022. Martin's group was leaving a nightclub on the Sunset Strip after celebrating a friend's birthday that night. At around 3 a.m., a pair of masked men reportedly tried to rob them of their jewelry. Martin yelled at the robbers in an apparent effort to save his friends. One of the suspects fired his gun, hitting Martin in the skull. The assailants left him for dead in the parking lot in front of Pink Taco as they fled in a black vehicle. Martin was brought to the hospital in critical condition. He wasn't expected to survive. But 4 months after the incident, he was able to communicate with his family by blinking his eyes. In August of 2023, the 28-year-old made a remarkable step in his recovery and returned home for the first time since the incident. As of the latest updates, police were still searching for the suspects. Number 1. Keith Ireland. Florida man Keith Ireland was fired from his job as a store clerk after helping Jacksonville police catch a robbery suspect in late October of 2010. The 56-year-old was working at the Hess station near Emerson Street and Phillips Highway when 28-year-old Jamie Butterman walked in at around 4 a.m. Butterman subsequently left, then came back with a knife. He was only a few feet from Ireland when he slammed the door to his booth. Ireland fled outside as the suspect made his way towards the unattended counter. When Ireland looked back into the store, he saw that Butterman had ripped out the cash register. According to Ireland, the sight made him mad enough to go back into the store. The clerk then took a 70-ounce bottle of Coke and threw it at Butterman, who was fleeing into a getaway truck with the register in tow. Ireland called 911 and relayed part of the truck's license plate number. The police quickly found the truck and gave chase. During the pursuit, the register, which contained $274.82, was thrown out of the window by the suspect and would later be recovered by police. The chase spanned across the St. Johns River and ended when the truck crashed into a fence near Memorial Park. Butterman was taken into custody and held without bail on charges of armed robbery, felony fleeing, and criminal mischief. His getaway driver was also caught a short time later with the help of a police dog, but other details of his arrest weren't released. Butterman would later plead guilty to the robbery and was sentenced to 20 years behind bars. On the day of the incident, Ireland was suspended from his job at the Hess station pending further investigation. 4 days later, he was terminated because he'd failed to follow several company safety rules. According to a Hess spokeswoman, Ireland was reportedly unable to find another job in the wake of his firing. A state attorney said Ireland's actions were critical to apprehending Butterman, adding that he should have been given a medal rather than having anything taken away from him.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather give up an eye for a single glimpse into the future or give up an ear to be able to understand your pets? Let us know in the comments section below.